think Splatoon Raiders is a completely unambitious, inoffensive, just middle of the road game that kids will love. If you've played RPGs for 20 or 30 years, it's mediocre. And I hate to use that word because it feels like I've been using it a lot lately, calling every game mediocre. How can everything be mediocre, right? At what point do I have to admit that this is a problem with me? And I can admit that, but even so, I'm not saying this to get people mad at me. I'm being sincere. Splatoon Raiders, I don't hate it, I don't love it, it's just mediocre. I think most of my complaints have to do with Raiders being an RPG. Now, I've spent the past 2 years covering mostly RPGs on my channel. I like this genre, but when you've played hundreds of these games, certain things that didn't bother you 20 years ago start to feel grating because you keep seeing these issues over and over and over in so many games. With Raiders, this game isn't balanced. It's imbalanced to make room for all of its RPG systems, because it wants those systems to feel relevant. And I guess the issue I have with this is, the RPG systems are so... what's the word I'm looking for? Intrusive. They're so intrusive that they erase most of the depth that comes from learning how to actually play this game. So let's start with what I think the biggest issue is, which is the difficulty balance. This game is a joke. It's so imbalanced. You keep your resources if you fail a stage. So let's say we're in a stage, right? And the level recommendation is 6 levels above where we're at. So we go in there, we've got 3 lives, we make it a decent way in, but we die 3 times, get kicked out. All of the experience you gained, all of the weapons you picked up, all of the currency, the gadget upgrades, you keep all of that even if you fail the stage. Why is this a problem? Well, if we go back in that stage, now we're a little stronger because we gained a level and now we've got a stronger weapon with us. We make it a little bit farther, we die, keep all of our new loot, we go back in and do it again. And you can just do this over and over, passively getting stronger until you manage to beat the stage. But the thing is, you didn't actually get better at the game. You didn't learn where you went wrong and figured out how to correct that issue. You just got a 4-star weapon on your last run, pumped some levels into it, and suddenly everything started dying much faster. You didn't get overwhelmed this time, so you finished the stage. You think you became a better player, but what actually happened was the RPG systems propped you up. It's got an inverted difficulty curve. You know, with most games, they start easy and gradually ramp up. Raiders is the opposite. It starts somewhat challenging because you can't equip 3 gadgets yet, you don't have a bunch of upgrade slots, you have 1-star weapons. Then as you make it further and further, the difficulty slips and it becomes easier and easier. This game is so easy even on the hardest difficulty, which is survivalist. I'm talking strictly solo here, not co-op. I didn't even touch co-op because it was easy enough. I'm not an amazing Splatoon player, but even without constantly dying in stages to exploit that resource retention, I just kept up with all the RPG systems, and it was smooth sailing the whole way through. At least with the mainline series, Salmon Run didn't have this RPG layer to make the harder difficulties easier. If you became a better player at Salmon Run, the difficulty ramped up to keep up with you. But if you become a better player at Raiders, you need to play for 30-something hours to unlock the Endless mode to finally get that challenge. And I didn't do that. I played for like 20 hours. The post-game wants you to go through 100 floors of this tower to unlock Endless mode. And I'm not gonna do that. This tower is like separated in chunks, like 3-floor chunks. You beat one, you unlock the next chunk where the difficulty goes up by 1. 1 level difference. Come on, you want me to play for 30 hours to get to the challenge? Don't you think that's absurd? And I don't buy the, well, it's a game for kids excuse, because who do you think was playing those ball-busting NES games and arcade games in the 80s? Kids. Kids were playing the really tough stuff 40 years ago. I think it's totally wrong to say kids don't want a challenge. People of all ages can appreciate a challenge because it feels rewarding to get better. It doesn't feel rewarding to make progress in Raiders because I don't feel like I'm getting better, I'm just getting better gear. And you can also replay the story mode stages twice. A second time on spicy mode, which is so easy that it's not even worth talking about. and a third time on extra spicy, which is also easy because at that point you've got 5-star weapons and souped up gadgets that can melt everything. I didn't even mention this yet. This game is a looter shooter. It's like Borderlands. So you're running around these same stages over and over trying to get rare weapon drops. So if you love grinding, I don't know, maybe you'll love this game. But these weapon types are carryovers from the mainline series, and they made sense to use in those games because those were team-based. It made sense to have a sniper on your team or someone with a roller because you could cover your teammates' weaknesses. Someone with a roller could ink ground really fast, but they were bad at a range. The sniper was great at a range, but it had poor ink coverage. Salmon Run gave you a different assortment of weapons during each rotation, and you couldn't pick what you wanted to use, you were randomly assigned. So you've got the bucket during this round, you've got to learn how to use it. You couldn't pick your favorite weapon, pump a bunch of upgrades into it, and just rock that for every round. No, you had to learn the strengths and weaknesses of each weapon, and what kind of role is best suited for that weapon, because you've got to help your team out. You're not KG Solo Man 5000, you can't do everything on your own. That was the point of the weapon variety. But in Raiders, you're not forced to use any weapon type, and it's balanced around single player. So what's my incentive to learn every weapon? Well, there isn't any. What's my incentive to use a slow weapon like the sniper, which made sense in PvP, but makes no sense in tiny rooms that are super hectic? There isn't any incentive. These weapons exist in Raiders because they were present in the past games, not because they were deliberately designed for Raiders. They don't make sense to be included here. Let me backtrack a bit because I glossed over the 5-star weapons and why they're important. You can upgrade weapons, but if they're not 5-star rarity, you can only level them up 5 times. For 5-star weapons, you can level them up until they reach 100. So once you start getting 5-star weapons, everything else goes into the meat grinder. You turn them into upgrade currency to level up the 5-star weapons. So this entire post-game consists of running around stages, getting 1-star, 2-star, 3-star weapon drops left and right, and you don't have any use for them. For the story mode, yeah, I'll use these, but in the post-game, all of this is just mulch. This is another one of those dopamine receptor games, just like a gacha, where everything aside from the 5-star SSS loot gets broken down into currency. Then when you get a 5-star weapon, you pray that it's the right one. And when you get the Holy Grail, you kinda just run around and destroy everything and go, now what? But here's where I realize that this game is so in love with its grind that it forces you to engage with it. I've mentioned this several times in the past as a feature of RPGs, which is they're self-regulating. If you don't like it, don't use it. You've heard that phrase, right? You don't like the overpowered weapon, don't use it. You're leveling up too fast, stop unlocking skills. Balance the game in whichever way suits you. I don't like this feature. I'd much rather the developers intentionally balance a game rather than leaving it up to the player, but I tolerate this feature. Look, if I didn't, I wouldn't play RPGs. But the thing is, you can't really self-regulate in Raiders because so many stages have time limits. For example, let's say I don't want to use my 5-star weapon because it's too powerful. Alright, I'll use a 2-star level 20 weapon, which is much weaker, trying to recapture that challenge, right? But in stages with time limits, you have to kill the enemies as fast as possible, and you can't do that if your weapon is too weak. So we're in the post-game, this is a level 50 something stage with a time limit. Every stage in this 100 floor tower has a time limit, so I can't use underpowered gear as a way to self-regulate the challenge. Even if I'm good enough to survive, the enemies have so much health because they're balanced around you using the high-level upgraded gear. So if I go in under-equipped, I'm gonna fail because of the time limit. Here's where I'm gonna get that usual snarky response. Oh, he's complaining about an RPG being an RPG. But that's not what I'm complaining about. I'm complaining about being unable to get a satisfying challenge from a series that historically I thought had pretty decent balancing, even counting the single player mode from Splatoon 3. That single player mode that nobody talks about was better balanced than this dedicated single player spin-off game. Now, I like the time limit stages in theory. They should force you to play at a minimum skill level in order to pass them. If you can't kill enough guys, it's because you're inefficient, try again. You've got to get better to succeed, and I would love that if I wasn't leveling up and retaining new weapons and currency after failed attempts. How can I say I got better at this stage and that's why I passed it, if on my second attempt I'm going in with a stronger character? I can't say that. So what do? Don't allocate stat points, don't upgrade gadgets, use weaker weapons until I find that sweet spot where I can barely finish a stage? Well, then I'm spending the entire game tweaking my loadout for every stage to make sure I can barely finish them within the time limits. I'd be spending just as much time farting around with these RPG systems as I would if I were playing normally, not trying to make it more challenging. And I'm not seeking the ultimate challenge, but here's the main point I want to make. It's not that I want the game to be hard, it's that I don't want to coast by using the same strategy in every stage, because that gets boring real fast. And challenge is one way to get around that, but there's another way, and this game has that solution built into it with these sampler dungeons, because in these stages, your custom loadout is irrelevant. You're given a specific gadget or weapon, and the stage is deliberately designed around them. You have to learn how to use them to complete the stage. If you fail, you can't just come back with more health and a better weapon. You have to meet that minimum threshold of understanding to win. Which means when everything clicks and you finally clear that threshold, you feel good. It feels rewarding. Now I know how this gadget works. Now I feel like I'm better at platforming. And these aren't tough stages, but at least I'm not mindlessly turning my brain off like I am for the other stage types. These are my favorite stages in the game, and they resemble the single-player stages from Splatoon 3 and the Octo expansion from Splatoon 2, except the ones in Raiders are shorter, less creative, and less thematically interesting. All of them take place in the same warehouse environment. They're completely detached from the RPG system, so the entire game can't consist of these stages. That's why they're optional. And once you beat them, you can't try them at a higher difficulty level like you can for the other stages. They're not a good source of currency, so you don't want to grind in these. They feel tacked on, and yet these tacked on stages have better level design than any of the story content. In the story stages, I reached a point about 5 hours in where I was clearing every map the same way. Throw out a turret, throw out a fan, and just kill everything until I charge my super. Then I activate super and kill everything even faster, plus now I'm invincible. If the room is tiny like in the time stages, even better, just run in and mash. Even though I can't see anything, it doesn't matter because I don't actually need to see anything because I'm invincible. What's the point of giving enemies unique weaknesses if I'm fighting 50 at once by myself? Do you really think you can encourage specific strategies by spawning 10 different enemy types in a tiny arena? I'm just gonna circle strafe until I charge my super. And on the next stage, I'm gonna do that again, and again on the stage after that because it works. That's why I stopped playing this game, because it lets you get away with using the same strategy the entire time, and it actually encourages this behavior because of how it's balanced. I don't know how you can reuse the same enemies, weapons, and gameplay from a series that actually requires strategy and turn it into this. I don't hate this game, I don't think it's bad, I think it's not for me. I bought it because I like the series and I figured, hey, single player salmon run, I'll check that out. As a Splatoon fan, I'll check that out. I think that's reasonable, don't you? You like a series, they make a spin-off, you want to give it a try. I'm open to trying new things. I like that Nintendo wants to make spin-offs for their popular franchises. I don't want more of the same, but I don't think Raiders is for me. This is for people that like pulling a rare character in a gacha, then funneling all their resources into making them a killing machine. I've said in past videos that I like Splatoon and that I was looking forward to Raiders. I'm not coming out of nowhere to say, by the way, don't like this game, see ya. No, I genuinely wanted to like this. And I love how it looks, I love how it plays, the controls are awesome. I love the gyro controls, and the main mechanic of Splatoon, which is creating usable terrain, that's still here and that's still great. There's this constant tug of war. Your ammo is what you use to help you move around safely. Shooting is this balancing act of knowing when to put pressure and when to retreat. I love that, but then the RPG layer kicks in and stomps all over the place. It becomes the star of the show instead of the combat and movement. And look, I love RPGs, but I don't think turning Splatoon into an RPG lets its combat and movement shine anymore. I can't imagine myself grinding out the endless mode for 50 hours, and I can't imagine starting this game from scratch and starting that grind all over again. I really do think that this is a one and done experience. That's all I've got. I know someone's gonna say, how can you complain about this game being too easy and you didn't even unlock endless mode? But man, do I need to play a game on the hardest difficulty for over 20 hours to have it finally test me? I need to reach the post-game after the post-game? Why can't the campaign bring some heat? And also, that endless mode is just timed combat arenas. Those are not designed stages with platforming and meaningful enemy encounters. It's just waves of enemy spam. How is that any different from Halls of Torment or Vampire Survivors? You know, I can't preemptively address every complaint in this imaginary argument that I'm having, so I know who this game is for, and I know that this genre, looter shooter, whatever you want to call it, I don't think it'll ever be for me. I still love Splatoon, and I'll just hold out hope that Splatoon 4 gives me more of what I'm looking for.